Welcome in, welcome once again to the newest edition of 3 In, 3 Out, the most unique Seahawks recap show in the multiverse. I'm your host, Clinton Bonner, and I am joined by the one, the only, the great Brandan Schultz. Brandan, it's a 16-15 loss. Who cares? Everybody's healthy. That's great. And we still got tons and tons of clarity in this game. But Brandan, we also got some fuzziness in this game. We're going to talk about the yin and the yang and do it differently this time. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I thought we were getting clarity on this whole multiverse thing with the new Deadpool movie. I thought we're done with the multiverse. It's out now.
No spoilers. All I know is they canceled the second season, The Acolyte. I didn't watch the first one yet. I still will watch it, but now that's gone.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the first season yet either. I might be part of the problem.
Yeah, me too, but I will watch it. I will get back to it because I am a Star Wars fan, so I will watch it. And so that's gone. But what's not gone is our Seattle Seahawks and, of course, all the amazing content that is coming out now that we're in the preseason and getting ready for the season. Brandan, where should the good folks go to find all the great content?
Yeah, well, the easiest place to go, where we have everything, go to seahawkerspodcast.com/subscribe. And you can subscribe to the Seahawkers podcast. You can subscribe to For the Hawkra. That's on the Believe Network, BLEAV. And we've got shows there. We've got shows, Seahawkers podcast. So it's all there. And you can even link to getintheflock.com, where if you want to help support everything we do, it's all right there.
Of course. And if you want to see guys in beards, youtube.com/SeahawkersPod. Podcast. So you can see, the whole thing, Seahawkers podcast. So you can see all the people in beards minus Wilson Kahn, the youngin, when he gets back out here. Unless, of course, he might have grown a beard in the offseason. I haven't seen the young lad in a bit. We will be talking to him quite soon for a preseason show for season-long bets coming right up. But right now, we're talking Seahawks. We're talking Titans. We're talking preseason week 2. Stick around. We will do our From the Flock. But we are going to do a different variation of 3 in, 3 out. We're calling it clear versus fuzzy. Different way to talk about the game, Brandan. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's the preseason. We're trying new things, and this is going to be fun.
Perfect. So let's get right into it. Like we were saying at the preamble there was a lot of things that became a little bit more clear. And for me, Brandan, quite a number of things that was like, oh, I thought I had a beat on this roster spot or this position group, and they actually got more complicated, more fuzzy. I think they're good problems to have, because when things got fuzzier, and we'll talk about it as we go, I think it's because we got a pretty deep team, man. We got some depth, and we got players who are, you get the second string, third string going, I think these guys could be starters in the NFL and maybe on our Seahawks. Is there a spot on the 53? And that's what we're going to talk about today, dude.
Well, it's fun to, in a game specifically like this one against the Titans, not having the starters out there. They put in all their work, I guess, in practice during the week when they were doing their one-on-one practices. So no, us fans, we get to see the second and third string. So we make of it what we will, and we'll dissect then what we saw, some of these performances. And yeah, I think there were some people that stood out, and some others where it did make you question whether or not you really had a bead on some of these position groups.
Yeah, made me second guess even just last week's show. I'm like, I was pretty confident about something. Then I saw another dude. I'm like, I like this guy too. So we'll get into it. So let's start right away. Let's go with I call clarity number 1, clairvoyance number 1, perhaps there, Brandan. All right. The deal for me was, hey, look, we all know Mike Morris is making this team, but now it's like, is Mike Morris going to be taking away playing time from some other people that we thought was cemented? So starting off with Mike Moe, dude, the dude's everywhere, Brandan. He seems to be, he's everywhere you want to be, which is basically in the quarterback's face or stuffing, runners at the line of scrimmage. Extremely versatile, fast, disruptive. So it's a 2-parter. I mean, how much more confidence do you have in Mike Moe? And do you think he's going to be disrupting some of the other dudes who were like stalwarts just last year?
When it comes to Mike Morris, it is intriguing the different places that they use him, because they line him up on the edge, they line him up on the interior. And I think because he has that versatility, I guess if I were to project him as one of the current Seahawks starters, yeah, I'd probably go with Draymond Jones as probably his closest comp. And so if he's going to take any snaps away from somebody, I
Mm.
feel like that's his closest competition, guys that can kind of play inside, outside. And he might even be able to do a little bit more than Draymond. But with the size that he's been putting on, it was fun because I watched the game with EJ Snyder from Bootleg Football, and that was one of his comments as we were watching. He's like, "Holy smokes, Draymond Jones, or not Draymond Jones, but Mike Morris has put on like a ton of weight and is a tower." And yeah, it was fun to do that. It's also fun to see our Ryan 911 in the chat with a 9.99 super chat. Our live executive producer saying "Go Hawks," and I think we got a donation from him last week that we didn't recognize either. So a big thanks to Frost in the Discord.
Yeah, dude, Frost, you're the man. Thank you. And yes, coach, that's for you, Frost. Appreciate you doing that. And I love the answer, at least because it's intriguing, right? The Draymond Jones part. We talked, I think it was either the What If show or 3 and 3 out last week. I forget. So either the preview or the recap show. But I was going a little bit off saying, look, Draymond Jones, he has not been healthy. He has not gotten on the field, and he did not have a very good season last season. So there's no tethering with this coaching group to Draymond Jones. So we will see. But I like the fact that you pointed that, the Mike Morris part is probably most applicable to his snaps. So if he's not quite ready for game one, or simply if Mike Morris outperforms him, I guess $18 million be damned or so. Like, they might just play the dude from Michigan and play him more. So super interesting. We will check that out as the season progresses. But I can't imagine. I don't think we'll see too much of Mike Mo in game 3, but it's not. We don't have that many players, so maybe he plays a lot again.
Yeah,
Because
I think we do, because
yeah, I guess so.
we're seeing a lot of it. Was fun listening to the local announcers too, because initially I think one of the announcers said, "Oh, it looks like on defense there's a couple starters out there."
Mm,
And I went down the line and I'm looking at the players out there and I'm thinking about the starters. And
like
even
no.
though it does feel like Boye Mafe is a starter, he's actually listed as the second string on the depth chart, along with guys like Trey Brown. So yeah, even though we saw them as quote unquote starters, they're actually second team. So it's kind of speaking to some of this depth that I'm excited about in particular, and which means we're probably going to see him in preseason week 3.
We very well may. It is a seriously deep team, and kind of like suddenly deep, because we were not that serious and we were not that deep last year. So this has been a bit of a quick reclamation project. So kudos across the board. All right, why don't we get to fuzziness number 1? Remember, this is 3 and 3 out, but we're doing it a little bit different this time because why not? It's our preseason 2.
Clinton lost his glasses and he thought it'd be fun to do clear versus fuzzy. And, it's a thing.
Yes. So, okay. So fuzzy number 1. All right. So I'm going to just come out and say last week on 3 and 3 out, I was like, look, George Halani, better pass blocker. I like the way he runs. Square. He just seems a little bit more fluid in the game. And McIntosh was pretty good last week, but he was getting lots of buzz, but I didn't see it. This week, McIntosh was great. He wasn't just like, good. He was, and Halani didn't get that many touches, which is another thing, by the way. It's like, well, were they kind of trying to bubble wrap Halani because he still might be the better pass protector? But McIntosh looked great, whether he was catching the ball, finding creases. I like the way he gets kind of really small exactly when he has to kind of fit through and get angles right at the line of scrimmage. We saw some cool blocking schemes for sure as well. But for me, I was pretty certain Halani was RB3 last week. This became a heck of a lot fuzzier for me. Brandon, wondering where you sit, man.
I'm not really partial to one versus the other. I am more intrigued about how this will go through the preseason. When it comes to Halani, I feel like he has more of the power, more of the balance. He's that type of back. But you do see with McIntosh, like he has that ability to make the cut and go and plant and make guys miss more so than I think Halani does. I also think McIntosh is a better pass catcher out of the backfield. And so, yeah, he went 8 carries, 46 yards to Halani's 2 carries for 3 yards. And then McIntosh also had 2 catches for 17 yards out of the backfield. So I think when it comes the pass blocking part of it, I feel like as long as you can get in a guy's way, like you just take the guy who's overall more talented. And if I'm just going based off of what I've seen so far, it does feel like McIntosh has more talent overall.
I'm so not. I can't commit yet. I can't see because I saw it 2 different ways, 2 different weeks. Literal sober yin, raging yang happening for me here. So I'm quantumly entangled on this one. I will have to wait and see. And I just don't know. And I also don't really understand or have a bead on, I should say, which player is potentially more sneakable to get on the practice squad. I feel like
Yeah.
McIntosh has the Georgia pedigree and was, even though he was a 7th rounder, still drafted versus undrafted in Boise State and not a national champion like the Bulldog was with McIntosh. Any
Kalani would be the guy then that
to
would
sneak?
be easier to sneak because guys like Kalani, you can find those guys.
Yeah.
They're pretty much everywhere. Like guys who are just competent, they can run well, like a guy that you can go to in a pinch for depth. But I don't see him as a guy who is really going to challenge for starting time. Like I feel, I feel more strongly about McIntosh.
Okay. So more strong about McIntosh, a little more. Let's not underestimate the sneakiness that could come with Halani to get to the practice squad. So I do think he's good. All right. That's our first pairing, our first clairvoyance versus fuzziness. We do have the whammy. Brandon, do the thing.
Can't not have a show without the whammy. This is 3 and 3 out after all.
After all, we have to have the whammy. All right. So clairvoyance point number 2, clarity number 2 here. All right. This one I just simply want to queue up as, look, after 2 preseason games, can we be clear and confident that the trade for Sam Howell was a very good trade? And if we have to rely on Sam for a game or 2 or 3, I think we're fine. I think we could be totally fine. This is not off the reservation. Let's start him over Geno. But I liked what I saw. I liked the 2-minute drill at the end of the half. I like the zip. I like the pocket presence, the one where he steps up between 2 dudes and gets it to AJ Barner for the first down. I like one where he's getting blitz off the edge and finds Laviska on a quick turnaround for a first down. I think Sam Howell's an okay quarterback, man. I think it's looking like a good, smart trade. What do you think?
Yeah, of all of the offensive players that I feel like we saw against the Titans, he was the one that stood out the most. And that's what you want to see for a guy who is expected to be your backup going up against backups. You want to see him move the ball down the field, make some drives. I would like to see just a little bit more, but yeah, I was happy with how he performed and happy with Devo Martzall coming in with the $9.99 super chat. Appreciate you guys. Go Hawks. Thanks for coming in, Devo.
Devo. He's got a name you could chant. Brandon, that's a chantable name right there. Devo.
Right.
Well, we appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that zip pass that he got down to who was that? Was Aesop for the obviously dropped.
Yeah,
in the
Winston, that zip that he did over the middle, a nice laser to Aesop Winston. That was one of his better throws of the day.
Well, was
and
it
then,
Aesop
in the back
in
of the end
slot?
zone too. It was a nice. Was that Winston in the back
It
of
was
the end
80.
zone too?
Winston
No, you're right.
touchdown.
It was Cody White that was
Cody
the
White,
one over the
82,
middle.
right? Cody White. That was a beautiful, just down the seam shot. But it was in the spirit of the traditional 3 and 3 out. There were those other 2 moments that I mentioned earlier. There's one where he's getting pressed on both sides, steps into the pressure, into a good little center pocket, finds Barner for an easy first down. Then he gets blitzed off the edge, and Shenault knew what to do. He knew the assignment, turns around with the sticks, balls in his gut. I mean, chain movers. So just from can he process the game quick enough to see what's happening, get the ball out on time, deliver it fairly accurately most times, move the chain, and then enough zip to take the shots he wants to take. He's checking the boxes for me, man. And by the way, it's the same quarterback I saw with the Commanders, where I was like, okay, a little bit of time, and that team was a disaster. But I saw the NFL arm and I saw the NFL kind of wit. So within 2 games, I'm really feeling bullish, by the way, for those that listen to the flagship show and are all 6.
I don't know. The way the Chicago Bears have been playing, we're all going to be saying bearish for things that are looking up.
Yeah, they are looking up, but that's not our team. All right, let's stick with fuzzy number 2. No whammy yet because we're changing things up. So fuzzy number 2, Brandon, I mentioned the tight end position. I don't know. I was busy today and the weekend was a blur, but Any word on Pharaoh Brown yet? Because how many tight ends are we keeping? Because Brandon, this is like the Hosier song for me, man. I fall in love every single day. So every day I see a new tight end, I'm like, I like that guy. I like that guy. I liked what I saw from Barner.
Barner, yeah.
I thought he was quite good, blocking, got open enough, skilled enough, and I saw what I like in kind of the average tight end that just goes and does a job. So do we know what's happening with Pharaoh Brown yet? And how many tight ends are we keeping? Because that room's getting fuzzy real quick.
There's been a couple different reports on Brown. One of them saying that he's planning on playing week 1.
Hmm.
And there's another one where he's sounding like he needs to get a second opinion on something. So I'm a little bit unsure. The whole second opinion thing, it makes it sound like, yeah, maybe it's not all that great. But if he's, yeah, because it's a foot injury.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if he thinks that he's going to be ready for week 1, then I count on him to be back out there.
Well, I always count on Amy Holmes. She's fantastic in the Discord, an amazing member on YouTube and everywhere else. We've known her for a lot of years, gone to games with her. Fantastic person. So she's saying he's on crutches, but says he plans to be back week 1. We'll see. So I guess we'll see. But I certainly trust Amy because she is always getting the good sources. Well, that'll be very cool to watch. Again, a pretty good problem to have. It still, to me, makes the Noah Fant signing and what we paid for him a little weird because of what we want to do. But I will say the Barner selection seems like he can do what Pharaoh Brown does if Pharaoh Brown can't go. And that's super cool. And we didn't mention Goldilocks Brady Russell yet. Beautiful toe drag swag. He did drop another one that would have been a first down that was easier. But it's becoming an interesting tight end room, which in the NFL, kind of like that. I don't need a stud tight end, period. I kind of like just a workman's group who gets it done. And I kind of feel like we have that, Brandon.
Yeah, and I think as far as depth goes, gosh, do you do 5 wide receivers, 4 tight ends? Do you only do 3 running backs and then, carry a guy like Brady Russell who can play a little H back and do the blocking stuff out of the backfield when needed? There's probably ways that you could work that, and I guess when it comes down to those types of depth pieces, it really comes down to special teams and where they see those guys fitting in there. So yeah, it's probably not going to be a huge impact, but yeah, I'm like some of the folks in the chat. Like, I want to know who our guys are that we're rolling with week 1.
Yeah. I mean, I know it cut down days soon enough. I think that's whatever after the game, of course, against the Browns. You mentioned quickly another piece that I think is in the spirit of the traditional show. I really liked also seeing Barner and Russell in motion, and they kind of motion into a like an active fullback position. And Grubb did that a lot with Westover. And sometimes he would kind of flank the guy out, but he would also bring the tight ends in and get that de facto fullback going. Saw that quite a bit. And a couple of plays, there was one time I know where Barner comes fully across the face, and then he gets like a seal block going and sprung McIntosh. He kind of kicked out the edge. That was a sweet play. So just liking these little wrinkles we're starting to see coming out of the Grubb offense. And hey, if you're going to use some of these dudes as a de facto fullback, full in on that stuff. So, all right, full in. Let's whammy it to get to clarity number 3. Okay. Clear point number 3. Okay, at this point, Brandon, I think it's as obvious as can be. You mentioned, will it be 5 wide receivers? Will it be 6? That's difficult. That part's difficult because then if it's only 5, you're probably cutting off Tariq Young and Aesop, who are jockeying for number 6, who are both playing really, really good football. But I think number 5 is definitely Laviska Shenault because of what he's just showing, but also he's like the perfect 5. He's perfect. He is the gadget guy, but he also is taking souls on freaking kickoffs, and he's making tackles defensively on kickoffs. So he's defensively sound. He's offensively like seeking blocks and choosing violence. And then he's also a chain mover who can do the end around and jet sweep stuff. So I think he's a lock for sure. Do you agree with that? But what else do you think? How big could Laviska's role grow, do you think, in 2024?
It's tough for me to call him a lock just because I know the 4 wide receivers who are locks on the depth chart, and then with him being on a 1-year contract, like, do you keep a guy like Laviska on a 1-year deal as a vet, or do you keep a guy like Derek Young or Aesop Winston that may be around for a couple more years on a cheaper contract? And that's a tougher decision to have to make. And I think you're right, though, as far as the plays that we're seeing. Shenault knows what he has to do to make this team, and he's making those plays on special teams to really make his case for being that number 5 guy.
And I feel like the types of plays he's making on special teams are the
Yeah.
type of stuff that McDonald purposely shows and shows and shows again on whatever the film days that they're doing, right? When they go to review. I mean, just the opening kickoff. He literally like left the ground. It was kind of cool, right? And found a block super late after almost stealing the ball from D. He said, "Okay, I'll go block for you," and it worked out quite nicely. Where they take it back like 45 yards out of the gate. That was kind of fun. So also kind of fun to see the kickoffs being used. And I do get the feeling, though, I feel like every time we kick it to like the 2, they get it back at like the 35. Or they kick it to us at the 2, we're at the 40. So I think teams are going to be like, yeah, it's going to kick it to the end zone.
Well, we saw that at the end of the game when it kind of mattered, right?
Yes,
It was like, oh, we'll kick it through the end zone and let them take it out at they'll have it at the 30.
Right.
So I feel like, as excited as we are to have an actual play, I do wonder how often, once we get into the regular season, if it'll just be, I'll kick it out of the back of the end zone, start at the 30.
Yeah, I think it may be for this year, and then maybe the rules committee will go back and tweak it further, and either make the punishment worse, that if you do down it, it's 35 all of a sudden, which is ridiculous, or just be like, hey, you got to take it out of the end zone. Like, that's it. You got to return it and figure that out, because that could be pretty cool. Because then you could actually get into a position where it's like, ooh, who could kick it to like the back corner of the end zone? And then you're starting back there, but you still got to return it. That could be pretty dope. So let's see how it all goes. All right. So another fuzzy for me is last week on, I forget, one of our shows. I think it was What If. Yes, it was What If, when Adam filled in for you. And we were talking about the offensive line. And I was like, look, guys, our best lineup is probably going to be, or the one I want to see is Haynes at right guard and Tomlinson at left guard. And Adam was like, well, maybe, but what if both the young guys beat out Tomlinson? I was like, no way. Well, then I watched this game, Brandon, and what gets fuzzier for me is I see Bradford having some great moments. I see Haynes have another, let's say, pretty good effort there, and they move Haynes over to left guard all of a sudden as Tomlinson's getting a rest. So this to me got more fuzzy versus more clarity. And I just wanted to kind of point that out and say, what do you think? What combination do you think ultimately do we field come week 1 versus the Broncos?
I guess based on it is a competition, which is what we've heard from Coach Mike. And Anthony Bradford, I thought, played well at guard in this game. And I think Haynes having that versatility, that was the more interesting part of it to me, was that Christian Haynes, who has played right guard his entire college career, that they chose him to be the one to be the flexible guy to move over to the left side and not Bradford, which I would think if it were a direct competition, or maybe it's just a competition to see which guy is more versatile in case you have to do certain things, in case you need a guy to come in, then you can work it out that way. I feel like based on how Haynes is playing, he is working his way into the starting lineup. He may end up there by the time week 1 starts, but it might be one of those situations where it is kind of a count on injury type thing, to where Haynes then either has to come in for Bradford or at the left guard spot, and and then he'll have to make his opportunity from there. Yeah,
it's so a little hard tell, not knowing. Right? It's just like we don't know, but it's interesting. It's breaking. There's just this jockeying going on where when Haynes was first taken it, I'm a UConn guy. I celebrated it. In fact, we were talking before I got on the air. I had my UConn reunion this Saturday. That's why I couldn't watch the game live. My old band got to play a rock show. That was a ton of fun. We had like 40 or 45 heads there with folks we either graduated with or like the year or two around us. So, and the campus is absolutely beautiful. So I'm all in my UConn feels here, and I want Haynes to win this job, but I also just want the best dudes to win because I'm a Seahawks fan, right? So
Sure.
it's gonna be super interesting to see that. Probably of all the things that are happening in the Browns game, it's probably going to be like the most locked in. Is like, does anybody just stand out and be like, and take it and be like, no, that is mine. Now we did hear that Haynes got first team reps this week throughout practice.
Yeah.
And then Bradford got second, but then he comes out and plays really well. And he has a couple of, Bradford like pancakes. So super interesting. That'll be a big thing to keep an eye on. And we have
Ideally, I think with those guys, you would like for just the future of the franchise for both of them to be good, and then you have two young guys on the offensive line at both guard spots, and it just works out ideally that way, right?
It certainly would be. And there's a bit of news for those that didn't see it today, where we're live right now on Monday night, that Connor Williams practiced for the first time today. So not just out there with pads walking around. He did some of the drills. He's hitting the sled and gearing up for what looks like he actually might be ready for week 1 versus the Broncos, which would be pretty remarkable, which is super cool. We got about 100 folks in here, which is also really, really cool. If you are new to the Seahawkers podcast, hey, hit the bell, hit the likes, hit subscribe. We do lots of shows 5 days a week, all unique shows. And, we take a little pride in that. We think we do it a little differently and probably have a little more fun than the average bear too. So speaking of fun, Brandon, please hit the fun whammy. It's a fun button, or really not a button. I shouldn't say it's a button. It's a physical thing that you strike, but it's all good.
Buttons can be physical too.
You know what? They tend to be, actually, what it turns out. All right. So not a digital button, but clarity point number 4, the Mama Cleo here that I saw. Look, you get later in the game. We talked about depth, but it's also like sometimes you get later in the game and the game becomes disgusting. You really can't watch it. And frankly, for our third string offense, that's kind of what it was. It was, we get 2 first downs the whole second half. It was ugly. And all the talk of PJ Walker is just as good, then that kind of went away real quick. And hey, whatever happens to PJ Walker.
I don't know if we ever heard just as good. I just thought that after the first game, he looked kind of good.
There was
after this game, he did not look good.
Well, it's like one breath, it's Sam Howell should replace Geno, and then the other breath, it's PJ Walker's just as good as Sam Howell. And the fact is, both of those are incorrect, right? They're both wrong. But I hope PJ Walker, if he's not long for this team, ends up somewhere. I think he is good enough NFL wise to be a backup or certainly help a team on the practice squad, help them prepare week in, week out. But the dudes I do want to focus on, what you got?
No, I was just with regard to PJ Walker. The thing I guess that bothered me was putting him in situations like we kept throwing downfield 20 yards to the sidelines. Those are not easy throws to make.
Well,
and so I guess maybe it's because it's preseason, you're seeing what you can get out of them. It's one of the things that's hard to judge with preseason. I mean, you can obviously judge PJ Walker on his ability to make those throws, but if you're trying to win the game in those final moments with PJ Walker, are those the routes that you really send him on to, try and complete those passes, or do you try and complete passes that, he can actually make?
The part I don't know, because I didn't watch like the all 22, is, he's got some choices. There's not only one receiver out there, right? And he seemingly kept going outside the numbers, 15 yards downfield, like you said, trying to get the perfect honey hole shot, but it wasn't working. He was really missing wide, and it's just wasn't great. But we'll see. We'll see what happens to him in his career, and it really probably not going to, if that impacts our Seahawks this year, we're going to have a bad time. But a good time in a depth way, man. You watch Jamie Sheriff come in the game, and then you pair him with Marquise Blair. Brandon, that's a recipe for a good time. These are dudes who go at it, who go, bring their hats, who are kind of a no fear. This is Marquise Blair 4 years ago. The dude's just a missile out there still, and he's taking his shots. At least as the game wore on, I was like, whoa, these guys are something still. I don't think Blair has, I don't know. I don't think he's got a legit shot to make the roster right now. Maybe he can go to practice squad and resurrect the career. But what about Sheriff? Does Sheriff have a potential space on the edge? Because He's playing really good ball, man.
Yeah, it's tough because that's an area where they do have a lot of depth. But yeah, when you put up 7 freshers, when you get a sack, 5 hurries on the day, he was second most on the team behind Derek Hall.
Mhm.
It does. It makes you wonder if there could be a spot for him. It's an awfully deep group. I mean, we were just talking about with Mike Moe and where his snaps and who he's going to take away from. Who is he going to take snaps away from? Who are you going to take off the field to put Jamie Sheriff out on the field? I have a hard time finding a spot for him on the final roster.
Me too. Me too. I wish it wasn't the case, but I'm also cool that it is the case. And hopefully it's just a dude that tucked away in the Pacific Northwest is not getting too much attention, and just you could sneak him right back over to practice squad and
Yeah.
let him develop that much more.
And I could see that too. I think that's a guy that you probably don't have to worry about. And hey, if he gets an opportunity, you say, hey, well, that's great for him. Hope it works out for him. And yeah, but jealously, you hope that it works out for us as fans. And yeah, I'm with Amy. He's fun. Hopefully, the practice squad.
Yep, I like it. I like that a lot. That's a good plan. I will stick to it with y'all. I think that's a great plan. All right, fuzziness number 4. Again, I like how the fuzzies, you get the warm and fuzzies. These are all things because of problems, but good problems. So, Brandon, friend of the pod, Miles Adams, a couple of weeks ago, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, going into the summer, looking at the roster construction, contracts, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he's going to be one of the odd mans out. And the scheme, well, he's kind of a tweener. He's fast. He's twitchy player, not exactly super strong, obviously a strong human being compared to the average bear, right? But for the position he plays, not the strongest guys, more relies on quickness. And yet, again, another preseason's ticking by where Miles Adams is just a good football player, and he's making plays, and it's tackles for losses or 1 yard gains, tag team pressures where he's stunting, and all of a sudden Mike Morris is free because he did his job, and vice versa. The dude could still play football. And now if you start to look at some other of the beat writers 53s, they got him right on the bubble or now making the 53. So what do you think of our boy Adams's chances, man?
You're right to have it fuzzy because it does feel really fuzzy for him as far as bubble. Because I think he's right on the bubble. And again, we get into special teams. How could he have that potential use on special teams, especially with the new kickoff rules? Does that tweenerness help him out then in those areas? Whereas, because he's a pro at this point, that he can play all of these different positions and provide you depth, and that you don't have to worry that if he needs to go out there, he's going to be able to make the most of his opportunities. So I don't know if he's going to make it. I'm not going to be shocked one way or the other, but I'm rooting for the guy. And he's one of those guys that, I mean, every single year I think we connect with a lot of these guys who are kind of toward the bubble because it is that, just that mentality of, that these guys have to work as hard as they can to make an NFL roster, because if they don't, then they're gone. And it's that, that type of mentality that you just like to see.
Yeah, and just remembering when we had him on the podcast too, that was a cool episode a couple of years ago now, but really good just to get to know the guy more. And remember, like, he went to Rice University down in Houston, not a major school. So when you talk about work, just continually having to prove it at every single level to get this shot, that's the continuation of the Miles Adams story, which I think is super cool. I did throw the bonus in there of the fuzziness because I think it adds to the fuzziness that Darrell Taylor looked good. I realize it's against the second or third stringer. This is a second round guy from Tennessee who was really flashing a couple of years ago and kind of has, obviously had challenges against the run, but his flashes also flashed less last year. But he looked good. He looked fast. He looked violent off the edge. His bend looked to be back. Any chances for him? Do you think good chances? Any chances? What do you think about Taylor?
I was very not impressed with Taylor in this game because
Really? Okay.
when you think of the competition, where you see like with Derek with Hall, like I expect Derek Hall to show some dominance
Hmm.
against second string type guys. When Daryl Taylor got in there, it was second string and a lot of third string.
Yeah.
And so for him to just have a couple of pressures, that to me, yeah, you saw some nice moves, but then you take into account some of the competition,
Hmm.
and I guess I was less excited. I mean, two pressures on the day. He had a tackle, an assisted tackle, and that was. I guess I wanted to see more from
Yeah.
Taylor in a moment like this.
Well, I think it's fair too. And it's also, it's also like with Taylor, we would see him almost get home a lot quite often. And it's like, okay, he's almost there. He's almost there. And it's like, okay, he got 8 sacks and he could pitch to 10 or he could pitch to 12 because he almost got there 4 or 5 times, but he never quite got over that hump. So in a game where he's going against second and third stringers and he's still like almost getting home, well, maybe it's just a little too far a bridge for you to kind of get to that, get that hype bridge to get psyched about him again.
Well, it's how he gets a lot of his sacks are ones where he just is in relentless pursuit. He's not the type of guy who is quick off the edge and is right to the quarterback. And he's more of that guy who is, yeah, relentless and ends up getting the quarterback if maybe he holds the ball a little bit too long.
Yeah, that you're right because he ends up getting a lot. And why are you right? Well, because you're right, but also like where's the proof in that? Because a lot of his sacks actually are strip sacks, which is like, oh, that's a good thing. Yes, it is, but it's because he took the long route around and the quarterback had nowhere to go. He had to hold it, and he gets it from behind, and he gets a lot of strip sacks in his career, like an overweight amount per sack ratio than the average guy, right? So good point there. Yeah, okay. You walked me off of that bridge. Miles Adams on the squad. Taylor, we'll see, but we got to
If
get
I had to
Miles.
choose between those two guys, I would 100% take Miles.
Oh, hit that whammy. You did it. You didn't know this, but that was the longest play in the history of humanity. Since we interviewed Miles Adams, I was just trying to get you to say that, which is 2+ years ago, right? So I just like Miles Adams. I think he's a pretty darn good football player, and I know he's a great dude. All right, we have one more piece of clarity and one more piece of fuzziness in the very good tradition of the sober yin, raging yang, the balance. We could say them together. Look, after 2 games, I could tell you Tyrese Knight can flow to the ball as a linebacker and hit and tackle. After 2 games, I'm not sure he knows how to cover quite yet. I
Mm.
think he's getting a little lost out there, a little lost in the sauce. And it's just like, this is what I saw and interpreted with my own eyes, just with one watch. And then hearing McDonald kind of say what he said, I was like, all right, kind of sees it the way I see it too. Cause McDonald said something like, look, I told you the guy could tackle, but then he really went into a little bit of like, but he's got to clean this part of his game up, which I think is the understanding and the recognition when it's not a run, right? When he's got to go into pass coverage. So it's one question, 2 questions bundled in one. What did you like? What do you think? What do you think the gaps are?
Well, for a 4th round linebacker, I still am excited about the potential with Tyrese Knight. It's this preseason that it's going to allow him to potentially grow into that position. So, yeah, I haven't seen so much where I'm pounding the table and saying, well, I don't need to see any Dotson, just put him in the starting lineup right now. No, I think that this is he's in a good position then to grow into that middle linebacker spot, because as a 4th round pick, these aren't guys that you're expecting to play right away. If he plays some special teams, if he goes out there and takes a couple snaps through the regular season to work into it, then that's more of what I expect from a 4th round linebacker.
Yeah. And I think the piece for me that is still just exciting is I think we up leveled our speed tremendously at linebacker, and we did not have that the last couple of years. We were slow over the middle, and by choice in many ways, and I think that's going to just feel a lot different on game day. We're going to feel a lot faster, which is especially at linebacker which is super cool. And I did see that Adam joined us in the chat here as well. So he's helping us out. What's
He's
it?
also dumping on Daryl Taylor and that's one of the things I noticed that, when Daryl Taylor was in the game, they were running at him. Yep.
Yeah, they're which is what you would do, right? Knowing that he has those challenges. We did not mention Derek Hall. Derek Hall, like, people are like, well, who are they playing? Well, he's playing the guys that are in front of him. He's out there as our starter, even though he's maybe a second stringer for us, but he's playing whoever is out there that the team's putting out there as their starter for the preseason. He does look like he's ready to take that leap and put the more full package together, which is super, super cool. He had like 2 outstanding plays. The sack, he ran right through the left tackle, but then he had that other play where he just collapses a tight end's like lungs and soul, and then careens into another dude and forces a tackle for a loss. So anything that anybody else, do you want to go on about Hall or another player or two that you really were stoked about or had some more questions about that caused you some fuzziness?
No, I think we hit on the top 3 with Mike Morris, Derek Hall, and Jamie Sheriff. That felt like the 3 that, were the biggest standouts in the game. Trey Brown was, I guess, out there more than I would have liked to see, but only 2 receptions on him on 5 targets his direction. So that's also kind of what you want to see with him. And I guess where it comes down to it, I know just based on from the chat, like you want to see something more from the defense on that final drive when Mason Rudolph comes into the game, which was weird because they put Malik back out there. And you're thinking, oh, Malik's going to close out this game. But then no, for the final drive, they bring out Mason Rudolph and you go, oh gosh, here we have a guy who has starting experience going against 3rd string defensive players. How are we going to win this game? And, if we want to complain about, too much off coverage at a preseason game, I suppose, but they they mixed it up a little bit in terms of trying to disguise where the pressure was going to come from late too. So, it's one of those things. I was just glad they had that opportunity then in the postseason, kind of run through some of those things, but whether or not it's indicative of what Coach Mike's going to do with the defense in those final moments. I know Amy was mentioning it was Carl Scott calling the defense in the second half. So, I don't know if it's necessarily what we're going to see, but at least we got to see the opportunity. And, with Mason Rudolph driving and then kicking a field goal to win in overtime. Yeah, winning is better than losing, but it's I guess I'm not losing any sleep over it.
No, and ending the game and walking away with your players healthy is totally fine for the preseason, right? Sure. But you mentioned we're not sure that's not what we're going to see or that is what we're going to see. Well, it's not, in the sense that we'll have all our first stringers in there and they're really good at football, right? And then you can do different things because you'll have Spoon out there and Tariq and Byron Murphy and just this insane Leo, this insane.
It's not going to be Ty Okada and Patrick O'Connell.
Yeah, who I think O'Connell is probably our best coverage back at this point right now.
Yeah, well, and we didn't mention the Okada play that was nice too. He had one of the highlights.
Yes,
he
did. So. Nice interception for sure. But again, an exciting team. And so the very end's a little disappointing, but I would take more solace and more away from how we closed the first half when we had the ball than how we closed the end of the game, because just more people who are closer to starters in at that point, and you're really trying to evaluate a quarterback you traded for to figure out, do you have flexibility going into this season and the off season? Because right now there's talks of Geno extension and all those things. Now, again, I am not on the train that Sam is quite that close to Geno yet. But still really cool to see the way he executed with 40 seconds to go to get in position and get that field goal through. So I dug it. I would take a little bit more from that than worry about the 3rd and 4th stringers who, most of them are not going to find.
It's the Mason Rudolph PTSD that I think we all have as Seahawks fans. It was there with Colt McCoy. It remains there with Mason Rudolph, and I can't shake it.
For sure. Well, that was an amazing time to go through in a new fashion or a preseason fashion, a bit of an Omaha audible to do 3 and 3 out in a different way for today. But with that, so there was no Brandon because we understand what happens. We don't have an MVC because winners get sprinkles. We don't just give away. We don't fire up the 3D printer for preseason losses, Brandon. No, we do not. That's only for wins and for
PJ
regular.
Walker could have made a few plays, then yeah, maybe we fired it up. But we're
Correct.
not
Oh,
gonna.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. But we will never, ever, ever not have our From the Flock. Before we get to it, Brandon, can you remind folks what they should be doing if they want to become part of the Seahawkra family, bud?
Yes, you can go to getintheflock.com. And if you subscribe at $3 a month and above, it gets you an invite into our Discord group where that's where you're going to hear from the flock. And we have a specific channel there where you can post your ins, post your outs, and we're going to get to them right now, starting with.
We got Jay in Alaska. He says, in Shenault being willing to block on the opening kickoff and letting Williams get another 5 to 7 yards. That was a super cool play. Little confusion at the very, very onset at the goal line. Who's going to catch it? All right. D takes it. Shenault takes off and ends up like laying out Superman style and blocking a dude right along the sidelines there. And it was cool because then you got the energy of the sidelines getting fired up for like a 45-yard kickoff to open the game. Good job by Shenault.
Got Frost saying Derek Hall fighting through blocks to set the edge. And that was so one of the things when we're measuring Derek Hall and Darrell Taylor, yes, it's second and third stringers, but you can see very clearly that Derek Hall has improved in his ability to set an edge because he was the one doing it in the preseason. Darrell Hall not doing it, or Darrell Taylor not doing it. Yeah, it's obvious when you look at those two and their ability to sort of set that edge.
Hall, Oates, Taylor, it's all good. You make them my dreams come true.
There's Derek, Darrell, Hall, and Taylor. I wish I could say they're interchangeable, but they're not.
But they're not. One is better, and he's going to make the team. All right, we have Design Pete's Beach House in the Discord, but also live here. That's Amy. Amy says, in beautiful pass from Hal to White with the yak. That's the one that was right down the seam. White wearing number 82. Really cool pass because he gets it. It was a crafty pass. Because that can be a hospital ball really quickly, or it can be picked if you try to go a little too low. If you go a little too high and really put your receiver in danger, hospital ball against the safety, or you do it exactly friggin' awesomely and your receiver catches it in stride and gets some major yak. So we love that.
Well, and that's a legit NFL pass. It's one that you're not seeing necessarily from Malik Willis as you're watching this game. So for anyone who was lobbying for Malik Willis a couple years ago, you can now see that, yes, Howell, better quarterback, doing quarterback things. Maybe you don't get the extra mobility with Willis, but you got a significantly better arm, I think.
I agree. Got
Rising Hakra, Mafe, D Hall, Mike Morris showing up in the backfield.
Yeah, it's good stuff. He also gives some love to Michael Dixon with an in. Dixon's a very, very good punter. He's kind of a joy to watch. And he has an out there for Jason Myers with another missed extra point. We're just going to say it's the preseason and he hit his field goals, and the extra points hopefully will just get figured out by the time we play the Broncos because we might need them. Bo Nix, I know Adam's in the chat. By the way, don't know how Adam could pick this out year in, year out, every single year. Be like, this dude can play. I watch Bo Nix. I think he could play. It's like, it's pretty evident. It's like, I think this guy could play. So I think week one's going to get a lot more interesting. Be fun in Seattle when we do get a chance to play the rookie. We'll see if we can confuse him a bit, but it does look like Bo Nix can play. All right. So with that, a man who's always out there with us, the one, the only Flocktimus Prime, the OG Keith Ketover. He says, I love watching Blair hit. Yeah, man, Blair's still a missile out there, Brandon.
He is. Yeah, nice to see some hits from him. Not nice to see PJ Walker, Design Pete's Beach House, giving him the out, saying PJ Walker out. That is all.
Scott Campbell with the perfect yin and yang himself. He goes, in, it's only preseason. Out, it's only preseason. That is, we love the philosophy there, Scott. Appreciate it.
And why don't we close it out with Hawk Van Dyke? Clinton, how about you take the honors this week?
Okay. Bloomy, of course, now living in the UK, says, out. Didn't hear much from Murph after a scintillating debut. In, Target and Starbucks job applications being filled. Ouch, Bloomy. Ouch. These are humans too, bud.
Hey, how about we close it out with a live in having offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb able to give Coach Mike McDonald some tips on how to beat Bo Nix. There we go for week 1 already. That's a preview to a potential in from Morgan.
Absolutely love it. So going to get fired up. We got one more preseason game, of course, with the Browns. We'll see how that all goes. Rumor has it that Deshaun Watson's going to get some snaps. Rumor has it Geno Smith is going to get some snaps. So a lot to watch there. And and who else will be out there on defense? And yes, Hawk Van Dyke is pointing out that Murphy didn't do too much, but he was in very, very little, like, a series or whatever. Bubble wrap the guy. We know enough about him already, but that'll be fun to watch. And then, yeah, today is August 19th. So we're not talking about too far away at all. Before you know it, the Broncos will be up in the PNW and the place will be rocking and full of 12s. And I know we're all going to be fired up. So please subscribe, share this with 12s, because honestly, we can't grow the Hawker without you. And Brandon, that's what we're here to do, bud.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.